By now you should have watched the first video on clauses and logical relationships. You should have also taken practice quiz number 1 to check and see how you're doing. And you should feel fairly confident about this to now move to the next step. Again, let me say it, if you don't feel confident, please go back, watch some of that other stuff first until you really feel like you've got a grasp on subordinate and coordinate relationships. This is all going to kind of build on each other. Okay. Here we're building on the work, again, of Dr. Fuller, later developed by people like Beale and Schreiner and Hafman. But essentially we're asking this question: how does the whole clause relate to the other? How does the whole clause relate to the other clause? We're not just looking at one word in particular, we're looking at the entire clause. What's the relationship between them? I want to give you kind of an overview before we jump into this. So last time we talked about coordinate relationships and subordinate relationships. You can see under coordinate there's 3 different types of coordinate relationships: series, progression, and alternative. Under subordinate, though, we have several. There's 3 main types: restatement, distinct statement, and contrary statement, but under those we have several different ones. What we'll be doing in this workshop here is going through each of these step by step and trying to understand what it means when 2 clauses relate in this way. First, we're going to start with coordinate relationships. The first type of coordinate relationship is a series. In a series, each clause makes an independent contribution to the whole. Now, as we go through these different sorts of relationships, we'll always talk about the key words. Now, these words are sometimes in the text for us, but if they're not, they're words that we can add to kind of help us understand, is this the type of relationship that we're talking about? Okay, so they're a help for us. Let's look at an example. I drove my car to the gas station and I took my car to get repaired. Now again, we've broken it out, we've put a bracket there, as you see. And this we would classify as a series. Each clause makes an independent contribution to the whole. So we would label it with an S, like this. Let's look at a biblical example. The sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Here you notice we've got more than 2 clauses connected. Now with all coordinate relationships, it's okay to have more than 2. You can have 3 or 4 or 5, all connected together. Once we get to subordinate relationships, that'll be a little bit different. But here, remember, it's not just limited to 2. Okay? Again, we have something. It doesn't seem to be a progression of events. We don't seem to be talking about opposite events. We seem to be talking about separate events that are all going to happen maybe around the same time. So we would call this a series. The next one to look at is a progression. Progression is like series, but here's the key. Each one takes a further step towards a climax. Keywords include then, and, moreover, or likewise. And really the key to understanding if something is a series or a progression is to ask this question: is it working towards a climax? In the end, do you reach some sort of climactic point? Let's look at an example. He watered the flower, and it grew a lot, and it bloomed. You see, we aren't just talking about separate events. We're talking about separate events that progress towards a final climax, and it bloomed. This one's progression, so we'd put a P there in the middle of our bracket. Let's look at a biblical example. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. Now, one could maybe say that these are just individual statements. However, notice how he repeats the last item as the first item in each one. You get the sense of building. You get the sense that we're reaching some sort of progressive climax, which we do in the end with the word glorified. So this is a progression. The last type of coordinate relationship is alternative. In alternative, each clause expresses a different possibility arising from a situation. Keywords include or, but, while, or on the other hand. Let's look at an example. I can eat a donut, or I can go for a walk. We have a situation, and I have two options: eating a donut or going for a walk. This is an alternative, so we're going to mark this with an A. Let's look at a biblical example. Are you the one who is to come, or should we look for another? Again, two possibilities arriving from one situation. Alternative. Okay, let's practice. Are these series, progression, or alternative? When you walk, they guide you. When you sleep, they watch over you. When you are awake, they speak to you. This is poetry from the Old Testament talking about words of wisdom. What do you think? In my opinion, this is a series. We're not reaching any sort of a climax. We're just talking about different events. How about this one? Let the wicked fall into their own nets while I pass by in safety. What do you think? I would say this is an alternative. Probably not series because I'm showing two options arising from the same situation, right? Okay. Again, we could use the keywords to help with this. And with keywords, we're not adding to the translation. We're just trying to ask the question, what did the author, by phrasing the text exactly in this way, mean? Okay. Now we're shifting to subordinate relationships. We'll first talk about restatement. Okay. Interestingly enough, if you look at these three categories, they seem to correspond with Loth's categories of synonymous, synthetic, and antithetic. But we digress. Let's move forward. 5 types of restatement relationships, the first of which is action-manner. This one, the statement of an action followed by a more precise statement that indicates the way or manner in which this action is carried out. Keywords include in that or by. How about this? He traveled to North Dakota by riding a Greyhound bus. The action, he traveled to North Dakota. What was the manner in which he did that? By riding on a Greyhound bus. Okay, now notice something here. As we label this, we're actually going to attach 2 labels. We're going to put an AC for action and an MN for the manner. Okay? How about this one from the Bible? He emptied himself by taking the form of a servant. Action, he emptied himself. Manner, or how did he do that? By taking the form of a servant. Next, we have a comparison. This one is expressing an action more clearly by showing what it is like. Keywords include even as or so, like, or just as. The water is pure, like a stream that flows from a mountain peak. Sounds like poetry. So here we would attach a CF to the clause that includes the like or the as. Okay? How about this one from the Bible? As the Father has sent me, so I send you. Now where is the like or the as? It's actually on the first clause. So we're going to put the CF attached to that. This is a comparison. I send you just like the Father has sent me. The next type of subordinate relationship is negative-positive. Here, 2 alternatives are given. One is denied, and one is affirmed. Keywords include not or but. Let's look at an example or 2. The coffee is not hot, but it is ice cold. Here we've got 2 alternatives. One's denied, one's affirmed. Okay, so we put a negative sign next to the not and a positive sign next to the one that is affirmed. Do not be foolish, Scripture says, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Again, negative and positive. The next one we have is question answer. This one's actually relatively easy. We don't need any keywords. We just look for a question and then an answer to that question. When did he leave for the store? He left at noon. So we're going to put a Q next to the question and an A next to the answer. Who do you say that I am? You are the Christ. Question, answer. The next one is called idea explanation. Here, the addition of a statement is given to clarify the meaning of the main clause. Now, the clarifying clause may define only one word of the previous clause, but that's okay. All right. Keywords include that is, for, or, and other words. Let's look at an example. I drank from both bottles in the refrigerator. I had a little orange juice and a little milk. Okay, so we've got the idea. I drank from both bottles. But now, in the second clause, I'm going to unpack what I mean by both bottles. I mean I had a little orange juice and I had a little milk. We'll put an ID on one line and an EXP on the other. Let's look at another biblical example. Jacob has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and now he has taken away my blessing. The idea, Jacob's cheated, and now the explanation of how he has done that. Okay, these are all of the restatement type of subordinate relationships. Let's move on now to talk about distinct statements. There's 7 of these. First is ground. If you have a ground relationship, basically you're looking at a clause that gives a logical basis and support for making the preceding clause. This is the opposite of inference, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. Keywords include for, because, or since. Take a look at this. I decided to run because I was late. Because I was late is the reason for the first clause, and so I'm going to put a G for ground on that line. Let's look at this example from the New Testament. Let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. So that's a ground. Next is the opposite of ground, which is an inference. A statement is made or an event occurs, and a conclusion or inference is drawn from it. Keywords include therefore, so, wherefore, consequently, or accordingly. How about this? I was late, so I decided to run. The second clause is an inference or a conclusion from the first one. We're going to mark this with 3 dots. I know that might look a little strange or funny, but that's how we're going to mark an inference, okay? These 3 dots. I was late, therefore I decided to run. Consequently, I decided to run. Let's look at an example from Scripture. The end of all things is at hand. Therefore be sensible and sober in prayer. This is an inference. So we're going to put these 3 dots right there on the line that is inferred from the other clause. Next is action result. This is an action and a consequence or result which accompanies the action. Okay? Keywords include so that, or with the result that. How about this as an example? I ate such a quantity of pickles that my stomach is hurting severely. Okay, so I have the action, me eating the quantity of pickles, and now the result that comes from that my stomach is hurting severely. Or this well-known example from Scripture, God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. This would be an action and a result which accompanies that action. Here's another one that deals with action. This one's action purpose. Here we have an action and the one that is intended to come as a result. So keywords for here include in order that, with a view to the end that, or lest. Here you've got to think, what is that resulting action? Is it intended to come as a result, or does it automatically happen with it? Here, I started running every morning in order that I might lose weight. So we have our action and then the purpose of the action. Or how about this one? I long to see you that I might impart some spiritual gift to you. Again, we have an action and then the purpose of that action. The next one is if then. In this subordinate relationship, the causing action is only potential. We use logically the words if then, if, provided that, or except. Okay. If I eat a large quantity of pickles, my stomach will hurt severely. So the first one is the if, the second one is the then. Notice in the second clause, then isn't actually in the text, but I could supply it if I was confused about what exactly this was trying to say and make more sense of it, right? If I eat a large quantity of pickles, then my stomach will hurt severely. Yes, that seems to be the sense of the sentence. Or how about this one? If you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. If, then. This next one is called temporal, and this just means the time when the main clause occurs. Keywords here can include when, whenever, before, or after. Take a look at this example. I decided to run when I realized I was late. The second clause is giving us the time of the first. How about this second one? When you fast, do not look gloomy. Again, the first clause gives us the time that the second one occurs. Next, locative. This is the place where the main clause occurs. Keywords include where or wherever. So, I decided to run in the park that I love. Where did I decide to run? In the park that I love. I put an L there. In this next example, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Again, the first one gives the place where the main clause occurs. Okay. Now we're on to the last type of subordinate relationship, that of contrary statement. The first is concessive. This is a main clause and a contrary statement. Keywords include although, yet, although, or yet, or nevertheless, or but, or however. Okay. One example. I love pickles, although the pickles do not love me. So this is a contrary statement in the second clause to the main idea in the first clause. We're going to write a CSV for concessive. Biblical example. Although he was a son, he learned obedience from what he suffered. It's a contrary statement. We would write concessive. The other one is a situation response. A situation in one clause and a response in the other. Here, the key is that the response is often a surprising act. This is different from action result, in that action result usually is an inevitable result. It's going to happen. This one, there's a little bit of a surprise, something you're not expecting. The keyword is and. I gave a can of pickles to my friend, and he finished it off right there. Wow. The situation, and then the perhaps unexpected response. Or how about this example from Scripture? Jesus says, "How I would gather you as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you would not." We have a situation and the surprising response. Okay, that's it. Those are all of the logical relationships. Now, let's practice a little bit. See how you do. What is the relationship between these? Now for these, they can be any of them. Coordinate or subordinate, anything's fair game, okay? What do you think is the relationship between these clauses? First one. The Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. What do you think? I think it's an idea explanation. I think the idea is in the first, that the Lord is near to all who call on him. That is, to all who call on him in truth. It unpacks all who call on him from the first clause. How about this one? He supplies the earth with rain and makes the grass grow on the hills. In my opinion, I think this is a progression. We're working towards a climax, and the grass grows, in a sense, because of the first clause, although there's no dependent relationship between them. I would call this progression. Let's look at the next one. How useless to spread a net in full view of all the birds. What do you think? I'm going to call this locative. I think this is the place where it occurs. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. What do you think? If you said ground, I think you are correct. Second clause gives the reason for the first. Let's do one more of these. The Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in. I think this is a comparison between the Lord and a father. Okay, that's all for now. Why don't you head over and practice this in practice quiz 2. Trust me, it will help. This is not an easy lesson. These are tough things to get, but if you get it now, it's going to pay off in dividends in the weeks to come. Okay? So once you finish the practice quiz, once you feel fairly confident, then I want you to download the bracket for Psalm 3. You'll see the whole psalm listed there. And what I want you to do is find the relationship between each of the verses. Okay, each of the 2 clauses in each of the verses. You'll see it there on your bracket. Fill that out with your answers. Upload that to the forum along with a paragraph explaining the most significant observations you made from Psalm 3. That's all for now.